powers are diminishing. but I just always everything confronts me. I would say, "What's funny about this? Like, there's something funny about it." As horrible as it is.
How does a marriage?
She has spent almost 4 decades standing next to one of the most famous faces in Hollywood, and for nearly all of that time she has said almost nothing about what it actually costs her. Now, after 37 years of marriage, Tracy Pollan has finally put words to something she rarely discusses in public. What it really feels like to love someone through a disease that never stops taking. Not a movie moment. Not a red carpet soundbite. Just a quiet, honest admission that caregiving is hard, that it never really lets up, and that even the strongest love in Hollywood has had to be rebuilt, again and again, one difficult day at a time. If you have ever loved someone through illness, or watched someone you love disappear a little at a time into a diagnosis, this story is going to hit differently. Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan met in 1985 on the set of the sitcom Family Ties, where he was already a rising star and she was a young actress playing his girlfriend. By her own account years later, her first impression of him was not glowing. She has said she initially found him a little full of himself. But working alongside him changed her mind quickly, and within a few years the two were a couple. They married in July 1988 in a small ceremony in Arlington, Vermont, at a time when Michael's career was about to explode with the massive success of the Back to the Future trilogy. For a few years, their life looked like the kind of fairy tale Hollywood likes to sell. A hit franchise, a happy marriage, a young family beginning to take shape. Nobody could have predicted what was coming. In 1991, while filming the movie Doc Hollywood, Michael noticed a small twitch in his left pinky finger. It seemed minor, almost nothing, the kind of thing most people would ignore. But it did not go away, and doctors soon delivered a diagnosis that would define the rest of his life: young-onset Parkinson's disease. He was only 29 years old. Parkinson's is typically associated with much older patients, so a diagnosis this early was rare and, at the time, deeply frightening, both because of what it meant physically and because so little was known about how the disease would progress in someone so young. Michael has since said that when he came home and told Tracy the news, she did not hesitate for a second. In his words, one of the things he will always love her for is that in that moment, she did not blink. They had been married less than 3 years. Think about that timeline for a second. Most couples spend their first few years of marriage still figuring each other out, still building routines, still learning how to argue and make up, still deciding what kind of family they want to become. Michael and Tracy were doing all of that while quietly absorbing a diagnosis that neither of them fully understood yet. Neither of them had a roadmap. Parkinson's affects everyone differently, and doctors could not tell them exactly how fast it would progress, what symptoms would appear next, or how long Michael would be able to keep working the way he had before. That kind of uncertainty is its own particular kind of stress, different from a single crisis with a clear beginning and end. It is a slow-burning uncertainty that never fully resolves, and learning to live inside that uncertainty together, as newlyweds, shaped the entire foundation of their marriage before most couples even finish unpacking their first apartment. What followed was not a dramatic public reckoning. It was silence. For about 7 years, Michael kept his diagnosis almost entirely private, known only to close family. He continued acting, continued smiling for cameras, continued playing charming, quick-witted characters on screen while managing tremors, stiffness, and the daily uncertainty of a progressive neurological disease behind closed doors. This was not vanity. It was survival, both professional and emotional. In an industry built on image and physical performance, revealing a diagnosis like Parkinson's could have ended his career overnight. So the couple made a choice, together, to protect their family's stability and Michael's ability to keep working for as long as they could manage it privately. Tracy became the one constant witness to what the public did not see. She watched the tremors he tried to hide on set. She learned to read the subtle signs of a bad day versus a good one. She carried a kind of emotional weight that had no name and no audience, because as far as most of the world knew, nothing was wrong at all. It is worth pausing here to think about what that actually means for a marriage. Most couples build their relationship on shared experience, shared struggle, shared celebration, often with friends and family who can see what they are going through and offer support. Tracy did not have that outlet for years. She could not talk about it openly, could not lean on a wider circle the way most caregivers eventually do, because the secret itself was part of what she was protecting. Whatever she was feeling, whatever fear or exhaustion crept in during those years, she mostly had to carry it alone, or share it only with Michael, who was busy carrying his own fear. That kind of shared isolation either destroys a relationship or it forges something unusually strong. In their case, by all accounts, it did the latter, but not without cost. Michael has also been honest in later interviews and in his own writing about how he leaned on other coping mechanisms during those hidden years, including alcohol, before eventually getting sober. That is not a detail meant to cast a shadow on the story, but it is an important one, because it shows just how much strain that period of secrecy actually placed on him, and by extension, on his marriage. Tracy was not just managing the physical symptoms of Parkinson's during those years. She was also present for the emotional fallout of a man trying to numb the fear of losing control over his own body and his own career. Watching someone you love struggle with both a diagnosis and the ways they try to cope with it requires a particular kind of patience, one that does not come with instructions. Tracy has never framed herself as a hero for staying through that period. If anything, the way she and Michael describe it, staying was simply what love looked like at the time, even when it was exhausting, even when neither of them had the energy left to perform strength for anyone else. By 1998, the symptoms had become difficult to conceal any further, and Michael made the decision to go public with his diagnosis. It was a turning point, not just for his career, but for the entire direction of his life. Rather than retreating from public life, he leaned into it, eventually stepping back from full-time acting and turning his attention toward advocacy. In the year 2000, he founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, an organization that has since grown into the largest non-profit funder of Parkinson's research in the world. Over the past 2.5 decades, the foundation has directed more than $2 billion toward research aimed at better treatments and, eventually, a cure. It has helped fund major breakthroughs, including the identification of a biological marker that can help detect Parkinson's earlier than ever before, and it played a role in pushing forward national legislation aimed at accelerating research and improving care for patients across the country. None of that work happened in a vacuum. While Michael became one of the most recognizable faces of Parkinson's advocacy in the world, Tracy remained almost entirely out of the spotlight by choice. She rarely gives interviews. She has never tried to compete with Michael's public voice or insert herself into the advocacy narrative as a headline figure. Instead, she has quietly served on the foundation's board, supported its mission from behind the scenes, and continued acting in her own right, including more recent television work, all while managing a household and raising a family alongside a husband whose physical needs have grown more complex with time. Her restraint has never been about disinterest. It has been a deliberate choice to let her husband's voice lead the public conversation while she handled the harder, less visible parts of daily life with him. And those parts have been genuinely hard. Michael has been remarkably candid over the years about the physical toll Parkinson's has taken on his body, well beyond tremors. He has broken bones in falls, including his cheek, his hand, his shoulder, and his elbow, at one point requiring a titanium plate and more than a dozen pins just to stabilize a shattered arm. He underwent spinal surgery to remove a tumor unrelated to Parkinson's but complicated by it, a procedure that added new physical challenges to an already difficult daily reality. He has spoken about a mindset he adopted just to get through ordinary mornings, a simple, almost stubborn goal of trying not to fall down that day. Anyone who has spent time around a loved one with a progressive illness knows how much quiet vigilance that kind of goal requires from the people around them, the ones watching every movement, ready to help, trying not to hover too much, trying not to let fear take over the room. Michael chronicled much of this physical journey in his 2020 memoir, No Time Like the Future, and again in the 2023 documentary Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, which used a mix of archival footage and present-day interviews to show, unflinchingly, what daily life with advanced Parkinson's actually looks like. Both projects were praised for their honesty, refusing to soften the harder physical realities of the disease just to make the story easier to watch. What often gets less attention is that Tracy was present for nearly every moment captured or described in those projects, not as a subject of the story herself, but as the steady presence just outside the frame, the one making sure Michael got to appointments, the one there after a fall, the one managing the household logistics that allow a person with advanced Parkinson's to still function day to day. Documentaries can capture a diagnosis. They rarely capture the thousands of small, unglamorous tasks a caregiving spouse handles simply to keep ordinary life moving forward. Meanwhile, Tracy has continued building her own body of work as an actress, refusing to let her identity narrow down to caregiver alone. In addition to earlier film and television roles, she has more recently appeared in projects like the Hallmark holiday film Holiday Touchdown, continuing a career that predates her marriage and has run alongside it ever since. That detail matters more than it might seem. Plenty of spouses in caregiving roles eventually let their own careers, friendships, and hobbies fade into the background, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of guilt. Tracy has resisted that pattern for nearly 4 decades, and by her own account, keeping a foot in her own professional world has been part of what allows her to keep showing up for Michael without losing herself completely in the process. That is where Tracy's role has lived for more than 3 decades. Not in headlines, not in foundation galas, but in hospital hallways, physical therapy waiting rooms, and the ordinary, unglamorous work of helping someone get through a hard day without losing who they are. In a recent and rare public reflection, Tracy spoke candidly about what that experience has actually felt like from the inside. She acknowledged, in her own words, that it is very difficult for the family, for the caregivers, and for the patient, and that pretending otherwise would not do justice to what families like hers actually go through. It is a small quote, only a handful of words, but it carries enormous weight coming from a woman who has spent nearly 37 years mostly keeping that difficulty to herself. What makes her admission land so hard is the contrast with how their story has often been told publicly. For years, Michael and Tracy have been held up as a model of resilience, humor, and enduring love, and in many ways that reputation is well earned. But resilience is not the same thing as ease, and love enduring does not mean love was never strained. Tracy's honesty adds a missing piece to a story that has often been framed in purely inspirational terms. It reminds viewers that behind every optimistic headline about a foundation milestone or a red carpet appearance, there is a family quietly managing exhaustion, fear, and the slow grind of an illness that does not pause for holidays or good news. Those recent comments came during an event tied to the Michael J. Fox Foundation's ongoing fundraising efforts, the kind of gala where Tracy is usually seen supporting from the sidelines rather than speaking at length herself. That context matters. She was not making a dramatic personal announcement in a tell-all interview. She was answering a simple, direct question about how she manages everything, and instead of offering a polished, media-trained answer, she gave a real one. She talked about taking things one day at a time, about how their approach, as simple as it sounds, has worked for them, and about the importance of acknowledging that caregiving is not easy just because a family has learned to live with it. That kind of honesty, offered almost in passing rather than as a headline moment, often reveals more than a scripted interview ever could. It is also worth noting how much her perspective has been shaped by watching her own children grow into that role alongside her. She has described leaning on her 4 children, now adults, as an active support system rather than people she has to shield from the reality of the household. That shift, from parents protecting children from a hard truth to a family unit sharing the weight together, reflects just how long this journey has been. The same kids who were born into a household already shaped by Parkinson's are now old enough to help carry it, and Tracy has spoken about how much that support means to her, describing her children as people who show up for her the way she has shown up for their father. Raising a family through all of this added another layer of complexity most people never see. Michael and Tracy have 4 children together. Their son Sam, and daughters Aquina, Skylar, and Esme. Because of the timing of Michael's diagnosis, most of their children grew up with Parkinson's as simply a fact of family life rather than a sudden disruption. Tracy has said that her children were either very young or not yet born when their father was diagnosed, so in many ways it has always just been part of who their family is. Rather than treating that as a burden, She has described her kids as one of her greatest sources of support, people she can lean on, who show up for her the way she has shown up for their father for so long. That kind of mutual family resilience does not happen by accident. It reflects years of deliberate effort to build a home where illness was acknowledged honestly but never allowed to become the only thing that defined their lives. Michael has often credited Tracy directly for holding that balance together. In public remarks, he has called her the greatest gift of his career, tracing it back to the fact that landing a role on Family Ties, the show that made him famous, was also the show that introduced him to his future wife. He has said that whatever good exists in their family, whatever they do well as a unit, traces back to her. Those are not small words from a man who has received Emmy Awards, Golden Globes, an honorary Oscar, and in January 2025, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States, awarded to him at a White House ceremony in